So I'm back in Visual Studio Code and I still had the terminal open. I just typed in CLS so that I could clear the screen. And I'm gonna see if I can make this a little bit bigger. I want to install another piece of software, and this is something we need so that we can run the TypeScript files. We're gonna use npm again, so I'm gonna do npm install, and I'm also gonna install this globally, so I'm gonna do -g, and this is called TS Node. And it's a package which allows the user to run TypeScript files directly without the need of pre-compilation using the TypeScript compiler. So we can run the TypeScript files directly through VS Code without having to compile it to JavaScript and then run the JavaScript version of that. So npm install -g, and then the name is TS Node. Make sure you have this installed. I'm gonna run it anyway, but I have it installed. So I'm gonna run it. You can see it updated one package for me, but I have it installed already. So I'm gonna type in CLS again to clear the screen. So now we're almost ready. We just need to install the plugin so that we can run files in VS Code. So you see that I have this. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this terminal. So you see that I have this run button here. Maybe you don't have it if you don't have this plugin installed. So let's go to the extension. And the extension you need to install is called Code Runner. So if you search for Code Runner, so for instance, I would come in here and say Code Runner, and make sure that I look for that one. So the one from 100. So make sure you install that. So you can see that I already have it installed. So I don't need to install it anymore. So you might have to restart. I'm not sure. I didn't have to restart myself, but you might have to close VS Code and open it again after you install it, but I'm not sure. So if you don't see the little play button up here, then maybe you need to, close it up and then restart it again. But that's the extension that we're gonna need to be able to run these TypeScript files inside of VS Code. So make sure you have this installed. So now your VS Code should be almost ready. And the other thing is, let's go ahead and run this file again. Okay, so we have the same output, and I'm gonna get rid of the panel. So another thing is, you see that I have my output on the right. That's because I want you to be able to see exactly what I'm doing. So yours should be at the bottom somewhere here if you didn't change it already. But to change it, you just have to right click in this area, and you can see that I can move it to the bottom. So I can click on move to bottom, and you can see I have the output at the bottom. So if yours is at the bottom and you would like to have it on the right, like myself, then you can just right click in this area and then you say move to right. The last configuration we need is in the settings. So if you go to view up here and then you click on command palette, and you search for open settings. So it should be the first one that comes up, the one that says JSON, and go ahead and click on that. And I'm gonna see if I can, well, actually, I'm just gonna minimize this a little bit. So you can see that I have some configuration for Code Runner. So the plugin that I showed you how to install. And I have the show execution message set to false. And I also have clear previous output set to true. So for instance, if I change this, so if I change this to false, and then I change this to true and save this file. And now if I go back and I'm gonna show you what's gonna happen. If I run this again, you can see that we're getting some extra information, which can be useful in some situations. But in our situations, we don't want all this stuff. We only want the output of our program, which is the hello world right here. So if you don't want to see all these things, which should be the default for you, then go ahead and add this line, which is show execution message, and then set this to false. And the clear previous output, so if I go back again and run this again, you can see that it keeps the same output that we got before when we ran it the first time. So if you want to get a clean output every time you run your code, then you can go ahead and then add this configuration. So clear previous output, we're gonna set this to true and then save the file. Now if we go back and then run the file again, you can see it's cleared, and then we only have this clean output. And another thing that you might have is the minimap. So if you look down here, you see that I have editor, minimap enable, and then that is set to false. So if I set this to true, and you can see here that I have this minimap here, which is very good for navigation when you need to scroll very fast, like up and down. But in my case, it's gonna take some space here. As you can see here, it's really small here, but you can still see it. It's gonna take some space, and I don't want that. So I want to use this entire space for our code. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this back to false. All right, and save the file. So now you can see that the minimap is gone because we're not gonna be using that. So this is my settings, and I'll leave a link in the description if you wanna just copy and paste this. but it should be pretty easy. It's really just 3 lines of code. So once you have all this in place, you should be ready to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this configuration file and run this one last time. And you can see we get the output that we want, clean without anything else.